Everything else with Joel Skousen, worldaffairsbrief.com. Joel, thank you so much for joining us. You just heard my 5-minute breakdown there. Do you agree with that? Disagree? What can you augment? What can you say about the situation unfolding there in Oregon?
Well, I do agree with you, Alex. I think it's very important to understand the feds are about to make an example of the Bundy group there in Harney County. And so, as I say, I want to suggest, and I think, and hopefully that they'll be seeing this, I want to suggest a way out of this that I think will benefit both sides. Now, I happen to know Ammon Bundy. He's a very fine person. I think it was a misstep to be able to go into an armed occupation of this wildlife refuge just because of, just like you said, it's one thing to be defending your own property against an armed intrusion by the BLM. That can get public support. But when you're trying to undo a national wildlife refuge, which is a matter of legislative import and needs, and the public expects that to go through Congress, you're not going to win that battle. And now I've seen on bundyranch.blogspot.com the detailed evidence of all of the injustices the ranchers, not just the Hammonds, had suffered when the Fish and Wildlife Service and BLM went to strangle these ranchers, cut off their water supplies, cut off their access to the ranch when roads ran through the wildlife refuge. They have a long litany.
Setting them up for controlled burns, they let everybody else do.
That's right, and didn't prosecute themselves, their own agents, for damaging property, but prosecute people when it gets out of control. Worse yet, in the Hammonds case, they had to, in order to invoke the terrorism statute, they had to rule these accidental burns as arson. And in order to do that, they got a mentally unstable grandson of the Hammonds to, and I think this is just the prosecutors going after an individual who was only 11 years old at the time, got him to say that the burning of the 2006 fire was done as an arson to cover up for hunting deer on federal land. This is important because it's the only one they could pin the charge of arson on. It turns out to be bogus. Not only was the witness, even by the judge's admission, not competent to testify of that 5 years after the fact, he wasn't mentally competent. The point is, it defies all description. I mean, the only thing you need to cover up a hunting piece of poaching on federal property is remove the carcass, which every poacher does. You can't burn a carcass by starting a fire. You can't even burn the entrails by starting a fire.
It's ridiculous for anybody that knows. It's like saying that the Bundys were stealing land when they had grazing rights since the 1870s. They play on the public's ignorance of common law and of state law and federal law.
So there are a lot of injustices that have justified the Bundys who have been tracking all of the other ranchers who have suffered at this. And so basically, they made a tactical mistake by saying we want to undo the wildlife refuge. That can't be done. So what I suggest that Ammon does is, before any armed confrontation, before they seal off and start a siege, that he take the high ground, take advantage of the fact that the media has already given some fairly favorable press coverage to the fact that there's no crazies running around. They're cleaning up the place. They're taking care of it. They're not ransacking it. In other words, there's been some positive press coverage, even from the liberal media in Oregon. They got to take advantage of that, say, we're going to stand down voluntarily because, one, we've already got a sufficient amount of positive press for the Western lands movement here. And number two, that it's very important to realize that the ranchers have been, and their rights have been violated. And what they need to say is, we want to demand a Ranchers' Bill of Rights be created in Congress. This is similar to the Pilots' Bill of Rights, when the FAA was running roughshod over pilots and had control of the judicial machinery that prosecuted pilots. And they forced, through Congress, they forced the FAA to set up a standard of due process. And I think that's what ranchers need, so that water rights cannot be taken away, that grazing rights cannot be diminished arbitrarily by the BLM. If they were to come out with a proposal like this saying, this is what we want, and then stand down, they would have the high ground. People would say, yeah, they're not a bunch of crazies. This would accrue to their benefit.
Well, Joel, this is exactly what I said days ago, and I'm sure we both independently came up with the same idea because it's just common sense. Exactly. I like the Bundys. They're walking into a trap, and then instantly I come out Sunday and I say, look out for federal infiltrators. I mean, they're going to show up like flies on you-know-what. and be careful about people calling for violence. Look out. The Bundys are good people. I understand the government's in the wrong. They're the ones running around arms seizing things. Under the Declaration of Independence, I get that you could say they're in the right, but this is stepping into a trap in my informed view. I mean, I've shown I'm not stupid either.